The feeling surrounding the Golden State Warriors is no longer what it once was. The air of stability, that scent of glory that seemed eternal, has evaporated. What was once harmony has turned into tension. The atmosphere has become a minefield, where every word, every gesture, every silence seems to carry weight. The dynasty that once fascinated the world now faces a dilemma that transcends tactics and technique. The name at the center of the storm is Jonathan Kuminga. The young man who was once seen as the natural heir to the Warriors' new era now represents the doubt that no one wants to confront. How much love is left in this relationship? It all began subtly, almost unnoticed. A rumor here, a denial there, a cold expression during practice. But the fog thickened. When the first reports emerged that Kuminga had rejected a 3-year contract extension worth $75 million, many believed it was merely a bureaucratic issue. Clauses, details, bonus adjustments, the kind of impasse every franchise resolves with time. But time passed, and Kuminga's silence spoke louder than any official statement. It wasn't about money. It was about belonging. Behind the scenes, the situation began to smell of rupture. The coaches tried to talk, the veterans tried to calm tempers, but the emotional distance kept growing. What once seemed like a stalled negotiation started to take on deeper contours. Kuminga no longer smiled with the same ease, no longer seemed engaged in locker room meetings, no longer celebrated victories as he once did. His presence, once explosive and contagious, had become an uncomfortable reminder of a future Golden State might no longer be able to hold on to. It was in this context that Joe Lacob, the owner of the franchise, decided to act personally. He could have sent executives, representatives, or even the new general manager. But he didn't. He took a flight to Miami, where Kuminga was spending a few days, determined to face the issue head-on. It was a gesture of desperation disguised as diplomacy. Lacob wanted to look the player in the eyes, without filters, without intermediaries, and ask the question that lingered throughout the locker room. "Do you want to stay?" The answer never came directly. Kuminga simply replied, almost in a whisper, "Do you still want me here?" The owner smiled and said yes, but the sparkle in the forward's eyes had already faded. From that moment on, it became clear that the emotional bond between the two sides was broken. The link that once united player and franchise had silently snapped. Kuminga, though still wearing the Warriors jersey, no longer seemed to belong to that system. For him, staying meant repeating a story that no longer represented him. Steve Kerr's system, the veterans' hierarchy, the collective style that had kept him a reserve for so long, all of it had come to symbolize stagnation. And the player who once believed he was part of the franchise's golden future now dreams of freedom. Internally, Golden State sank into a dilemma with no easy solution. Trading Kuminga now would mean admitting the failure of a development project that lasted 3 seasons. Keeping him would mean risking a silent implosion, an irreversible strain that could affect the entire locker room. Sources close to the board speak of frustration. Some say the red flag should have started flashing months ago, when the player began showing impatience with his role in the rotation. But blind faith in the Warriors culture made management believe that time would heal everything. This time, time only deepened the wound. On the market, Kuminga's name divides opinion. Some executives see him as a rough diamond with rare athletic ability and the potential to become an all-star if placed in the right context. Others see only an undisciplined talent, incompatible with rigid tactical systems. This duality is precisely what makes negotiations so complicated. No team wants to pay a high price for a player who hasn't yet proven consistent, but all fear losing him to a rival and watching him explode elsewhere. This uncertainty makes the Kuminga case an emotional and financial time bomb. Meanwhile, behind Golden State's doors, discomfort reigns. The veterans avoid public comment, but they know that the presence of a dissatisfied player changes the energy of the entire group. Draymond Green, always the loudest voice, tries to keep balance, but even he seems tired. The locker room, once a symbol of camaraderie and collective purpose, now echoes with the uncomfortable sound of individualism. The team that made history through selflessness and synchrony now wrestles with the weight of doubt and ego. What was once an empire seems on the verge of a silent civil war. The sense of uncertainty is compounded by time. The trade window is approaching, and Kuminga's market value drops with each passing week. If he chooses to accept only the qualifying offer and become a free agent next summer, the Warriors risk losing him for nothing. On the other hand, a rushed trade could mean receiving only secondary pieces in return and giving up on a talent that might still bloom. Management finds itself cornered, afraid to lose, but equally afraid to act. And in that stalemate, the clock ticks relentlessly. The rumors grow louder. Sources connected to teams like the Miami Heat, Atlanta Hawks, Chicago Bulls, and Phoenix Suns are closely monitoring the situation. Everyone knows Kuminga is unhappy, but few are willing to pay the asking price. The Heat, known for their discipline and strict organizational culture, hesitate to bring in a player who could disrupt the environment. The Hawks emerge as the most logical destination, a team searching for youth and versatility, ready to share the spotlight with Trae Young. There, Kuminga would have the stage he's always wanted. Chicago, meanwhile, remains torn between rebuilding and fearing a fresh start, and Phoenix watches from afar, aware that their resources are limited. Deep down, everyone wants him, but no one truly dares. The problem is that while the market watches, the atmosphere inside the franchise continues to decay. Steve Kerr's system, once hailed as a masterpiece of movement and collective intelligence, now seems outdated in the face of a new generation of tall, physical, explosive teams. The small ball that once terrorized the league no longer inspires the same fear. And Kuminga, ironically, could have been the bridge between the two eras, if only he had patience. But he doesn't. He wants space. He wants the ball. He wants to be the star of his own story. And perhaps Golden State is no longer the right stage for that. The crisis runs so deep that there is already talk of an identity breakdown. The team that once symbolized modern basketball now looks like a shadow of itself. The defense has lost intensity, the shooting has lost confidence, and the connection between generations, between the legendary veterans and the rising youth, seems shattered. Kuminga's refusal to renew his contract is only the most visible symptom of a deeper collapse. Behind the statistics and the formal speeches, there is a growing sense that the cycle is over. And perhaps for the first time in a decade, Golden State faces the abyss of a new beginning. But the franchise's fate is not sealed yet. Behind the scenes, there is a mixture of fear and hope. Management knows something must change. The fans, meanwhile, are split between those calling for a total rebuild and those clinging to belief in the old magic. And amid it all, Jonathan Kuminga has become the symbol of an era that may be ending, and of another that is still struggling to be born. In the days following the meeting in Miami, the silence became deafening. No official statement, no public declaration, no attempt to disguise the discomfort. The Kuminga case had stopped being a rumor and turned into a specter hanging over the Golden State Warriors. It was like an open wound everyone could see, but no one dared to touch. And it's precisely in that kind of emotional void that the riskiest decisions are usually born. Time passed, and the defeats began to exact a price that went beyond the league table. The fans, long accustomed to victories and finals, began to feel something rare: shame. Not because of a lack of talent, but because of a lack of direction. The energy that once made the Chase Center a cauldron had turned it into a stage of empty stares. Each loss seemed more symbolic than the last, and it was in this atmosphere of controlled chaos that, out of nowhere, a rumor reignited a spark. The name Rhenz Abando began circulating behind the scenes. The news first appeared as a small, almost harmless note from an Asian source. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Golden State was reportedly in talks to bring in the Filipino forward, an explosive player known for his fierce defense and for a vibrant style that blends audacity and passion. Abando embodied everything the team seemed to have lost: energy, freshness, unpredictability. His arrival would be a symbolic gesture, a scream that the Warriors still knew how to take risks. Behind the scenes, no one confirmed or denied it, and it was precisely the board's silence that gave the story strength. Sources close to the team guaranteed that Abando's name had been discussed in internal meetings, not as an immediate replacement for Kuminga, but as a piece capable of reigniting something within the squad. Abando, with his almost instinctive drive, is the kind of player who changes the tempo of a game through sheer attitude. His style recalls the fire Golden State used to breathe when everything seemed possible. But there is something deeper behind this potential move. Bringing in Rhenz Abando would also be a strategic step beyond the court. Golden State has always stood out for its global vision, its ability to turn talent into marketing and marketing into community. And Asia, especially Southeast Asia, is emotionally bound to basketball. A Filipino player joining one of the NBA's most iconic franchises would not just be a sporting move, it would be a cultural bridge. Abando would become a symbol of representation, an instant idol for millions of fans who would see themselves reflected in the gold and blue jersey. The board knows this. They know that the impact of a name like his goes far beyond the court. It's the kind of move that stirs markets, media, and hearts. And, deep down, perhaps that's what Golden State needs right now. Emotion. A new reason to cheer, a fresh story to tell. As Abando's name gained traction, another echo began forming quietly, that of Kai Sotto, the young Filipino who not long ago was still fighting for space in Asian leagues, had once again become a topic among NBA executives, and curiously, his name also appeared among those being observed by Golden State. The timing was almost poetic. A team in emotional crisis, a weary roster, and a foreign talent ready to break barriers. The perfect setting for a new chapter. Kai Sotto was coming off an inspiring run. In a recent match against Kyoto, he dominated the paint with authority. 20 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and a commanding presence that impressed even the most skeptical scouts. His game combined elegance and brutality, the soft touch of someone who knows how to shoot, and the strength of someone who understands that the paint is a battleground. With each game, he seemed more ready, and the world more attentive. The Japanese press treated him like a polished gem. The stats backed it up, on the verge of reaching 1,000 points in the B League, already surpassing 500 rebounds and nearly 100 assists. But beyond the numbers, there was a sense that Kai was maturing too fast for the context he played in. His body, his mindset, his game intelligence, everything pointed to something greater. It was as if destiny itself was pushing him toward the NBA, and Golden State appeared there at the intersection of opportunity and need. The fit seemed natural. The Californian team has struggled with the lack of a dominant center since Bogut's departure years ago. Attempts to fill that gap with temporary players have never yielded the expected results. The Warriors' light and dynamic style has always had one weakness: interior defense and the absence of a consistent physical presence. And Kai, standing at 2.21 meters tall, seemed tailor-made to fill that void. The rumor that Golden State was scouting the player struck like a lightning bolt of hope among Filipino fans. Social media exploded. Hashtags with Kai's name mixed with messages of support, fan theories, and even edited videos of him wearing the blue and gold uniform. Suddenly, a team in crisis had found a new kind of love, one coming from the other side of the world. The Filipino public rallied, showing the strength of a passionate and loyal fan base. Inside the franchise offices, the topic began to be taken seriously. The move made sense both athletically and financially. A young, promising international player capable of attracting new sponsors and audiences. And unlike many names being speculated, Kai wouldn't demand a high investment. It would be a low-risk bet with enormous potential. The board, accustomed to thinking globally, saw a cycle closing. After years of dominating the American NBA, perhaps it was time to win the world back. Within the narrative, everything fit together. The Kuminga crisis, the search for a new symbol, the franchise's desire to reinvent itself without abandoning its identity. Kai represented the future Golden State had always tried to foresee, one of more universal basketball, more emotional, more connected with people than with statistics. His story of perseverance, patience, and faith in his own talent became almost a mirror image of what Kuminga was going through. While one drifted away from the dream, the other moved closer to it with every drop of sweat. What's most curious is how fate seemed to weave their stories together. Kai's possible arrival wouldn't just build a bridge to the Asian market. It would also bring a breath of humility to a team that had lived too long surrounded by its own glory. The presence of a hungry player, eager to prove his worth every minute on court, could remind the veterans what once made them great: hunger, sacrifice, and a collective spirit. Every day, tension and hope coexist in the same space. Training continues, but the atmosphere is different. Some journalists who follow the team say they've never seen the locker room so quiet. It's as if everyone is waiting for something: a decision, an announcement, a change. Steve Kerr tries to maintain a message of stability, but knows the squad needs something new to breathe. And deep down, perhaps he too hopes that this new will come from afar, from a name no one expected, but that could redefine the future. Kai Sotto continues his journey in Japan, but the distance between him and the NBA seems to shrink with each passing week. Golden State watches him, the fans call for him, and the story writes itself slowly, in the rhythm of destiny. The same destiny that now pushes the team to a crossroads between past and future, between the weight of achievements and the need to be reborn. What comes next could define an era. Kuminga may leave. Abando may arrive. Kai may be the new hope, but one thing is certain. The Golden State Warriors stand before the mirror, facing the reflection of their own humanity. And for the first time in a long while, the shine of their gold depends more on soul than on talent. In the days following the surge of rumors about Kai Sotto and Rhenz Abando, something subtly shifted within the atmosphere of the Golden State Warriors. It was as if, amidst the storm, a gentle breeze had begun to blow. The locker room, still tense and quiet, started to show signs of curiosity. The veterans listened to the speculations and exchanged discreet glances. The younger players whispered behind the scenes, and even the coaching staff seemed more attentive to the news coming from across the ocean. The idea that new faces could bring a new soul to the team was starting to gain strength. The team, long accustomed to living around the genius of its veterans, now found itself facing a dilemma: continue trying to rescue what had been lost, or begin writing an entirely new story. And perhaps that was the most symbolic point of all. For the first time in years, the Warriors needed external inspiration. They needed someone who could make them feel again. Talent alone was no longer enough. They needed emotion. They needed fire. Kai Sotto, without even realizing it, was already beginning to play that role. His performances in Japan had become a recurring topic in American sports shows. Analysts who once ignored the B-League were now commenting on his games. Some laughed skeptically, while others watched with growing respect. Images of the young center dominating the paint, celebrating after every basket, interacting with fans, began circulating across all platforms. Suddenly, he was no longer just the kid from the Philippines, but the player who could change the future of a sleeping giant. And within Golden State, that narrative landed like an antidote to exhaustion. Steve Kerr, who had always valued intelligent basketball, began internally discussing the need to add a player with attributes that broke away from the current roster pattern, someone with physical presence, hunger for growth, and humility to learn. The front office analyzed numbers, compared statistics, reviewed footage. What had begun as a rumor was now taking the shape of a concrete plan. At the same time, fans did not remain idle. Within days, hashtags like Kai to the Bay and Abando to GSW began appearing across social media. Filipino communities in San Francisco and Los Angeles mobilized en masse, creating campaigns, videos, and even online petitions urging the team to give both players a chance. B-League arenas started welcoming fans wearing Warriors jerseys, a mix of hope and indirect message. It went beyond sport. It became a cultural movement. Behind the scenes, NBA executives watched everything with interest. It was rare to see a foreign fan base influencing a franchise's narrative so much, And for a team that had always understood the value of being global, the opportunity seemed obvious. Golden State had never been just a team. It was a brand, a symbol, a story of innovation. And now, facing its first true existential crisis in a decade, there was a chance to be reborn through an emotional bond with the most passionate audience on the planet. But while hope was taking shape off the court, inside it, the conflict remained. Jonathan Kuminga continued to feel distant. His behavior in training was professional, but lifeless. The body was there, but the spirit seemed gone. He trained, executed plays, but without that spark that once made him special. The contrast was painful. On one side, a player who no longer wanted to stay. On the other, two young talents who dreamed of simply having a chance. And that's where the plot thickened. The downfall of one could become the redemption of another. Golden State knows that if it decides to part ways with Kuminga, it cannot afford to make the wrong call. Fans can forgive a loss, but not a purposeless sacrifice. That's why every step from the front office is being analyzed with surgical precision. Joe Lacob, who has lived through years of glory, knows that a single miscalculated move can turn an empire into ruins. But he also understands that sometimes courage is what it takes to rebuild. And courage is exactly what the name Kai Sotto inspires, not only because of his talent, but because of the story he carries. Since his teenage years, when he left Manila to pursue opportunities abroad, he had been treated as a long shot. Many doubted he could compete at a high level, but he kept growing, not just in height, but in character. Every practice, every trip, every fall was turned into a lesson. That's the kind of mindset missing in today's Golden State. That of someone who plays as if every minute were their last. Behind closed doors, a staff member even admitted anonymously that watching clips of Kai in action gave the team the feeling of seeing a kid who still believes the game is a gift. And that sentence sums up everything the Warriors have lost over time. Purity. Basketball, which was once their art, had turned into obligation. The spark in their eyes had been replaced by the routine of success. Now, they needed someone to remind them why they started. Meanwhile, Rhenz Abando remains a name that sparks curiosity. His electric, explosive style and ability to defend multiple positions make him an enticing option. He might not have Kai's height, but he possesses something equally valuable: attitude. And attitude is the fuel of teams that want to start over. His fit with the Warriors' philosophy would be natural: intensity, defense, and willingness to do the dirty work. He could bring the kind of energy that revitalizes a locker room. The possibility of having Abando and Sotto together on the same roster creates a narrative that goes beyond tactics. It would be the meeting of Asia's heart with the brain of American basketball, a cultural collision capable of reigniting the essence of the game. Golden State, long used to exporting style, could now become an importer of passion. It's a role reversal with its own beauty, a symbolism that perfectly fits the team's current moment. As negotiations continue in silence, the rumors keep growing. Some league insiders claim that the Warriors' front office is divided. Some want to keep betting on Kuminga's recovery. Others believe his cycle is over. In the midst of it all, Kai's name appears as a breath of future, a chance to start anew without abandoning identity. It's not just about a center to fix tactical issues, but about a symbol of hope, someone to remind the group what it means to dream. The truth is that the Golden State Warriors aren't just searching for new players, they're searching for meaning. After years of dominating the NBA, the franchise now faces the hardest question of all. What do you do when glory loses its taste? Success comes at a price, and that price is hunger itself. Reigniting that fire is the real challenge. And perhaps paradoxically, the answer may come from where no one expected, from the Philippines, from two young men who play with soul, who fail with intensity, and who love the game in a way money will never buy. The future is still uncertain, but one thing is clear: the old Golden State must die for a new one to be born. And when that happens, perhaps the first name of this new era will be that of a tall young man with a calm gaze who learned to turn every criticism into fuel. Kai Sotto represents something the Warriors lost, and are now trying to find again. The pure joy of playing, of fighting, of believing. In the end, this story isn't just about contracts or transfers. It's about humanity, about the passage of time, about how even the brightest dynasties must reinvent themselves. Jonathan Kuminga may be on his way out, Rhenz Abando may be on his way in, and Kai Sotto may be on his way to the Bay. But what's truly at stake is the soul of the Golden State Warriors. And perhaps, in the midst of this rebuilding, the team will rediscover something far more valuable than any title, the very essence of being part of something greater than oneself. If you've made it this far, it's because you feel the weight of this story. So stay tuned, because what's coming next might change the fate of the franchise. Leave your like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. A new era is taking shape, and when it begins, you'll want to say you were here from the very start.